Hi, my name is Chris Gondek. I'm class of 1990. I am the person who organizes the annual WCFM Throwback. I was a DJ at WCFM only really for 1 year, my senior year of 1989-90. But I've had a lot of friends who work for WCFM. I got involved with it, and then here we are. And I'm here to talk about some of the things I found in the stacks. Okay, number one is Beulah. This is how I got introduced to Beulah. This is a CD/album called "The Coast Is Never Clear," and this is actually the one they had before Beulah, "When the Heartstrings Break." Technically, I think this is a better album, but this is the one that sticks with me because I have an idea that everybody has like what I call a California album, something that means California to them, and for me, it ended up being "The Coast Is Never Clear." I will tell you, I'm going to read the comments on this. Less fuzzy, more orchestrated than the earlier work, this one. Still great as indie pop. Try 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, or 11. And the really big one off of this is Gene Autry. These guys are from Northern California, and it's fair to say they will take the piss out of Southern California whenever they have the chance. And Gene Autry is a pretty good one. Although, I will say, this one, Sunday Under Glass, which is an even more vicious takedown of Southern California. On this one it says, compares with the Beatles and or Montreal spring to mind, but most of all, I regard it as a much less experiential Beck, cheesy horns, but okay. I really think that says it all. Second one I talk about is Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison. Johnny Cash has a long history in my family. My grandfather adored Johnny Cash. I heard Johnny Cash all the time growing up. They're very similar men, although my grandfather's older, and Johnny Cash made more money and was a much better singer than my grandfather, but they both had a puckish sense of humor. This came out in 1968. Johnny Cash was in kind of a weird situation as far as career had gone. He had some issues with drugs. It hadn't been going well, and he decided, I'm actually, as a singer of Folsom Prison Blues, which is track 1 on here, I'm going to go to Folsom Prison and do a live show. Now, the show is pretty cool as it is. 25 minutes to go, where he's singing a song about somebody going to the gas chamber. Really hit home with this audience, because if you want a hot live audience, I suggest going to a maximum security California correctional facility and said, I'm going to do a live show. This crowd here is off the charts hot for this, and it's one of, I think, the best live albums ever. UMI, Hourly Daily. I learned about UMI, an Australian guitar band, oddly enough from a surfing magazine. And I had a friend who was going to Australia, and I asked, could you pick me up whatever the earliest or the most recent UMI album was? And it was Hourly Daily. This is the American version, the Australian version, and they are an Australian band. The cover looks a little bit different. I don't know really how to describe these guys. Somebody said on this, a great guitar, layered alternative with a lot of super bleh. Obviously, I cannot read very well. Anyway, Tim Rogers, who is the lead singer and main songwriter for this guy, is really cool. And although I was looking for the real album that I wanted to talk about of his first solo album went solo with a group called Tim Rogers and the Twin Set, What Rhymes with Cars and Girls, which is a keystone album for me, simply because if you ever listen to a CD or album and you think, holy crap, that artist got in my head, how did they do that? That, for me, is What Rhymes with Cars and Girls. Oddly enough, 25 years later, he got the band back together and they recorded a track-for-track answer to What Rhymes with Cars and Girls called something like Stars and Tines. It's not as good as What Rhymes with Cars and Girls, but this is probably my favorite UMI. Now, this is my second favorite UMI album because the one I love the most, an album called Deliverance, is not here, but this is a really solid one. If you're looking for something, I would suggest Mr. Milk is really good. Hourly Daily, the title cut's also really good. The Pogues, their debut album, Red Roses for me, and this is an EP of Sally McLennan that has amazing cuts, The Wild Rover and The Leaving Liverpool. This is when Shane MacGowan won the alcohol and got into him. And you can tell these are really early Pogues because Caitlin O'Riordan was still part of the band. She ended up marrying their producer of their second and third albums, Elvis Costello, first wife. When I was a sophomore, again, the album I want to talk about, which is not here, is If I Should Fall from Grace with God. It was really big, being played in fall of 1987. And the reason is that they had a track on that was on a spaghetti western by Alex Cox called Straight to Hell. Very fun, kind of fiesty, that was what the big play was. All sorts of really great stuff on there. And then there was this little throwaway track at the end of the end of the A side called A Fairy Tale of New York. And it was nice. It was a little duet with Kirsty MacColl. 40 years later, at Christmas time, you cannot get away from that album. I was on the Oxford program, 80, 89, and I saw, along with Bob McCarthy, hey Bob, St. Patrick's Day 89, we went to go see the Pogues at the Brixton Academy, and it ruined me for every live show after that. Kirsty MacColl came out and sang Fairy Tale with New York with Shane. Shane was in pretty bad shape by the end of the show, surprise, surprise, but the audience was nuts. I love If I Shall Fall from Grace with God. It's very polished. Again, maybe their album before them, Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash, it's an overall stronger album, but If I Shall Fall from Grace with God, to me, is like kind of it. And the last one. And I'm doing this for the kids out there. This is the soundtrack to Rock and Roll High School. Arguably the best rock and roll movie ever made that most people, particularly you youngins, have probably never heard of. This is an AIP feature with Roger Corman directing and producing. PJ Souls, who ended up marrying Dennis Quaid after this, is, God, I forget the name of her character, but she is bound and determined that she's the biggest Ramones fan in Southern California, and she's going to bring the Ramones to her high school, and they are going to overthrow the evil principal and things like that. The Ramones are fantastic guitarists and great band, but as actors, they are the worst actors you have ever seen in your life, and they had to work around them because they just couldn't act, and they really weren't interested in it. But the film is tons of fun, and this album is just full of amazing cut after amazing cut after amazing cut, particularly if you like the Ramones, Rock and Roll High School. And those are the albums I'm talking about on This Thing of Alumni Stacks.